Joining us now is CNBC senior analyst Ron Insana and professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan, Justin Wolfers. So, Ron, it's only day 2. We're not seeing a ton of economic impacts yet, but so far the markets seem to be sort of shrugging off the shutdown. What's happening?
Well, there's a belief, I think, on Wall Street that most of these shutdowns, with the exception of one that went a little bit over a month, are relatively short-lived and have limited economic impact. Mark Zandi of Moody's Investor Services has suggested that for every week that the government is shut down, you can trim 0.1% off GDP. And the Treasury Secretary was right. The current rate of estimated growth in this quarter is 3.8%. So if it were a month, you'd get down to 3.4% maybe, and the economy would still be growing at a reasonable clip. The market, though, may also be underestimating the impact of what's being discussed between the president and OMB director vote, that if there were to be mass layoffs, permanent firings from the federal government, that would most certainly have an impact at a time when we're not getting government statistics on the current status of the market.
Yeah, Justin, again, the S&P 500 closed at a record high yesterday on day 1 of the shutdown. Is it odd to see the markets go up during a shutdown? How do you make sense of it?
It's not particularly odd to see the markets go up or down because this is not a big deal for financial markets one way or the other. Look, the reality is there's different ways of thinking about economics. One is macroeconomics, the big stuff. And this shutdown's not going to have much of an impact. So when we talk about the ups and downs of the economy, what's happening to unemployment, GDP, it's a very, very small impact. And it'll be particularly small if it's a small shutdown. Eventually, most of the work will get done. Eventually, most people will get paid. Not a big deal. Now, let me say, that doesn't make it less infuriating, because what's actually going to happen through all of this is we've got a bunch of government services, whether it's folks who will help you with fraud or folks who publish national statistics. You and I, our tax dollars have spent the billions of dollars to get all that set up, and we're not getting any payoff. So it's disappointing. It's pointless. It's a silly game of chicken. But for those who are deeply involved, like that woman you interviewed just a moment ago, quite painful. But for the broader American public, not such a big deal.
Although we heard from the Treasury Secretary, there are broader implications. He says the shutdown will cause a hit to the GDP. This morning, the White House released a new Council of Economic Advisors memo that projects the economy could lose $15 billion per week during the shutdown. Justin, your reaction to that, and do you see the president using these as talking points to further blame Democrats?
Okay, so the Treasury Secretary is frankly just a relentless liar. So it's hard to know when and what and how to take seriously. The numbers you suggested coming out of the Council of Economic Advisors strike me it might have the right number of zeros, which is sort of good enough. And when we say numbers like 15 billion, that sounds like a lot. The point I was trying to make is in an economy that produces 30 trillion a year, it's a drop in the bucket. So again, two things are true. It's not going to upset the macroeconomic apple cart, and it's a pointless and dumb and destructive waste. And folks on both sides of politics, I would urge them to use those talking points. That's the whole point of a shutdown. Democrats are trying to make it politically difficult for Republicans. Republicans are trying to make it politically difficult for Democrats. If they were actually more successful at this, they all would have got their work done last week.
Ron, if this shutdown drags on, what kind of long-term effects are you watching for?
Yeah, I'm like Justin, in a certain sense, Anna, I'm a little less concerned about the shutdown per se as I am with what might happen during the shutdown. This notion of permanently firing, potentially tens of thousands of government workers, or going after programs which the president described as Democratic priorities, or let's say taking back money that's been congressionally appropriated for infrastructure projects in places like New York City to build tunnels and bridges. Those are the types of things that have a real impact on individuals, that have an impact on the labor force, and that I think could be hurtful in the longer run. And I think in one sense, where I would disagree with Justin, and we could effectively take our act on the road at this point, is that these priorities, some of which have been written into Project 2025, of which Russell Vought was one of the key architects, they're looking to deconstruct the administrative state and then using the shutdown as a pretext to do it. And so I think when you talk about some of the larger issues that they want to incorporate into their behavior with respect to the Republican government, which controls the House, the Senate, and the White House. That's where the pain comes, not so much from the shutdown itself.
For the record, I love you both, and I think you're both brilliant. I don't play favorites, and I'm glad to have you both as part of this discussion and offering your insights and how you're seeing it all. Ron, we know we aren't going to get some key economic figures during this shutdown. What would be impacted?
Well, as of today, jobless claims, which would, the weekly tally of state unemployment insurance benefits are not coming out. We won't probably, in all likelihood, get tomorrow's unemployment report, which is critical since the Federal Reserve this month is going to make another decision on interest rates without any further information on the labor markets, whether the unemployment rate went up, whether we lost or created jobs. And if there was sort of stretch on for a couple of weeks, we also won't get inflation data in the middle of the month. Again, very critical numbers. So the Fed's right now flying blind with respect to where the economy currently sits, and that impacts their decision-making process when it comes to whether or not to lower interest rates.
And Justin, President Trump is going to need to make a new selection now to run the Bureau of Labor Statistics. What do you make of him quietly removing his pick, E.J. Antony, this week? And what does it mean for that agency?
So President Trump tried to appoint to head one of the most important statistical agencies in the world a partisan hack, a clown, someone who's relentlessly unqualified. It's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This was a fellow who'd never run a bureau, knew nothing about labor, and only knows how to misrepresent statistics. So it turns out when you get to the very, very bottom of the barrel, even President Trump won't go forward. Although I fear that we're giving him too much credit here, which is actually it's the Senate that would refuse to let these folks through, the most profoundly unqualified. And I just want to spend a moment as a person rather than as an economist. I teach at a public policy school. We have truly brilliant kids who want to go out and make the world a better place. Ask not what you can do for your country, but what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country. Mm-hmm. And so to the public servants at home who really work so hard and wake up with a sense of mission and purpose, I just want to say I see you and I'm grateful for you.
Amen. I agree. Thank you, Justin Wolfers. Thank you, Ron and Sana. Good to have you both.